Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's workshop. Today we're going to be talking about social media and not using it as your portfolio like you kind of would your gallery on your website, those gallery pages. And we're going to teach you what to do instead of that. We're going to jump into how to use social media really the right way to showcase your business in the best possible light, not just showcasing your projects. And hopefully that's going to result in you winning more new jobs. A lot of folks use social media as a platform to just simply post photos of their finished work over and over and over. That's all they're doing on their social media is just posting those job photos and typically just the finished photos. There really is a better way to go about this. So before we jump in, for those that stay until the end of the workshop today, you'll be getting two different guides that will help you along with the examples that I share in this workshop. So stick around. Those will definitely come in handy for you to use as guides going forward in your social media marketing. By now, most of you guys have been on a lot of my webinars, a lot of my workshops, probably following our podcast as well. So you know who I am. You know that I come from this industry. I used to do remodeling. I've been a developer on $1 million custom homes. I've done real estate fix and flip. So I kind of really know the market inside and out from both sides of it now, from the actual remodeling building side, the doing side of it, to now being on the other side of it and helping companies market themselves and really build their brand so that they can drive more qualified leads, book more jobs, close more jobs, and then ultimately increase revenue and help scale their company. So that's what we do day in and day out. We just work with builders, remodelers, home improvement contractors to just really help you build your brand, drive your sales volume, and ultimately increase revenue for your company. So if you want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out. We'd love to help you out and at least just help, give you some guidance on what you may be able to improve upon, things that you might be doing wrong, perhaps. So reach out if you want some guidance. We're always here to help. Um, let's just go ahead and jump into why using social media as your portfolio is probably losing you jobs. Most remodeling companies approach social media with the same mindset they use for their portfolio on their website. They just post finished projects, those nice polished photos, sometimes the before and after transformation, which are pretty powerful. On the surface, this feels like the right approach. It highlights craftsmanship, demonstrates experience, and presents the business in a professional light. However, this method is built on a flawed assumption that showcasing work is simply enough to generate new projects for you. And that is a flawed and inaccurate assumption. A portfolio is designed to display past results. Its purpose is to prove capability. Social media, on the other hand, plays a very different role in today's environment. It's not just a gallery of work, it is a decision making tool for homeowners. When remodelers use social media purely as a portfolio, they miss its true function, which is to influence, guide, and accelerate the homeowner's decision to actually choose to work with them. The reality is, most homeowners actually use social media in different ways than we think they use social media. To understand why this approach falls short, your approach of just posting those project photos, it's really important to redefine how homeowners actually use social media. Homeowners are no longer just casually browsing for inspiration alone. By the time they land on your remodelers page, they are often already in the evaluation phase. They are comparing options, they're forming opinions, and they're narrowing down to who they might want to contact already. And so during this stage, homeowners are not just looking at photos, they're asking deeper questions. They want to know if a company is trustworthy, if the process of working with that contractor will be smooth, if the investment will be worth it, and whether the remodeler has handled projects similar to theirs. These questions are rarely stated outright, but they're always present, lurking in the background. In other words, these homeowners, they want to know what it will be like working with you on their dream project, not just the quality of your craftsmanship. What's going to be like to have that relationship with you for 3 to 6 to 12 months, and then well into the future probably. If a remodeler's social media presence does not answer these questions, it creates uncertainty. In a market where multiple options are available, uncertainty leads to hesitation or elimination. This is why simply showcasing work is no longer enough. Social media is part of the decision making journey, not discovery alone. Homeowners are silently evaluating before they even reach out to you. They've formed a lot of opinions. They've done a lot of research before they even start making those phone calls. And so they're already asking themselves in their own mind or with their partner or their spouse, can I trust this company? What will the experience be like? Are they going to be worth the investment? Do they handle projects exactly like the type of project that I want to do? And so, if your content doesn't answer those questions and concerns, they'll keep looking for the right contractor to work with. They're going to just go back into Google search results and they're going to look at different contractors, different websites, and see if they can find those answers more readily, more easily answered on another website that maybe has better content, maybe speaks more to the process, the step one, step two, step three. How those different steps in that process are defined and what that communication is going to look like, what that timeline looks like, things like that. And so let's talk about the core problem with that portfolio only content that we talk about. Portfolio style content focuses entirely on outcomes. It shows the final result, but rarely explains how that result was achieved. It lacks context, it omits the process oftentimes, and doesn't really communicate what working with the company will actually be like. And so this really creates a gap between what is shown and what the homeowner needs to feel confident. While the content may generate engagement in the form of likes or comments, it often fails to translate into inquiries or qualified leads. This is because it does not reduce risk or build trust at the level required for a high investment decision like remodeling or building a new custom home. These are big investment decisions. You need to help mitigate that risk in homeowners' minds, and you really want to build trust as well. Additionally, portfolio only content tends to make companies look similar to one another. Many remodelers can produce beautiful finished projects. That's what you're in business for, right? You should be doing great quality work, great craftsmanship. But without context or differentiation, homeowners are left comparing visuals rather than value. This often leads to price-based decision making instead of trust-based selection. You don't want to rely on being that remodeler that races to the bottom in pricing just to win that job. And so, what you want to be doing is showing outcomes, and as well as the process here. You also want to make sure that you're differentiating yourself from other remodelers. What is your unique selling proposition? What is your USP, in other words? And what about your process may not be reducing that uncertainty that some homeowners have? Because that's a big thing here is reduce the uncertainty. Again, that's talking about that risk mitigation. Just take all the worries and concerns and those type of things out of the homeowner's mind so they don't have to think about that. And Now they can just focus on what it's going to be like working with you, what that process is like. Um, and then you also want to avoid just passive engagement. And what I mean by that, we're not just looking for likes here, right? We're looking for leads, qualified leads of people that have a project that fits your scope of services and they actually want to work with you. And now it's your job to convince them that you are the right contractor to work with. And so, what we want to talk about really is the shift from showcasing to persuading. What I mean by that is, to make social media effective, remodelers must shift their approach from showcasing their work to actually persuading decisions from homeowners. Persuasion in this context does not mean aggressive selling. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean by persuasion, it means guiding the homeowner toward confidence. You're trying to provide clarity. You're trying to provide context on how you work with homeowners, and you're trying to reinsure them, and so that they can eliminate some of that risk and some of that fear that they have with working with contractors, because you know that you're a great contractor to work with, right? You know you do good work, you communicate well, your clients love you, you get referrals, like all of that about your company, about yourself. But don't take it for granted, because the homeowner doesn't know that about you. They don't know you from the other contractor, the other 20 results on page one of Google Maps. They don't know how you distinguish yourself, what it would be like to work with you. They don't have that inside track that they just get to talk to all your referrals and just go, oh wow, this is easy decision here. So this is what you're trying to do in your messaging and in the way you market. And so persuasive content, I guess I should say, is designed to answer the questions that homeowners are already asking. It helps them understand, and not just what the remodeler can do, but how they actually operate, what they prioritize, what that experience will feel like. This is the type of content that aligns with the homeowner's decision-making process rather than interrupting it. So by making this shift, social media becomes more of an active part of the sales process rather than, a passive display of past work. So think about that. Just kind of visualize that. Your social media where you're just showing all your past projects, just photo after photo. That's what your social media feed looks like. That's not what people are looking for. They want to get to know you, to understand the sales process, to understand what it's like working with you, the communication, and just who you are as a person. I see people on this webinar, and you're going to know who you are when I point this out. But you have a great social media threads. I see a few of you. I know your social media is good. You're not just posting photos. You're being real. You're actually showing who you are and posting funny stuff and things that you see around town. So you've got your social media dialed in from that perspective of not just posting photo after photo after photo. But we do want to talk about how do we do that the right way, because you do want to showcase your projects, obviously. And so, social media should really guide a homeowner toward choosing you. And so we want to start by breaking your content into three different pillars. And so the first pillar is about adding context. And what I mean by context is turning your projects into stories. I don't know if you guys have heard about story branding. That's a kind of a buzzword for marketing nowadays, of really trying to tell a story about the project, helping the homeowner envision himself being a part of that story, being a part of their own story. And so when we're talking about context in social media, what we're talking about is explaining the why behind the project. And so here you would want to highlight, the homeowner goals, the project, the ideas that they've brought to the table to begin with, what they were trying to accomplish. And then maybe highlight some of the challenges, maybe challenges with the layout that you helped solve for them, maybe taking out a wall, maybe moving the island, maybe creating a peninsula and a half wall, things that and you can help kind of talk about those challenges and give that homeowner ideas to really rethink their project and imagine what can really be. And then the different decisions that are going to go into this process and how you can help give them the expertise that you have, the knowledge to guide them in some of these decisions. So this first component of persuasive content is really about the context of your content, of kind of really building around the project itself. Every project should be framed as a story rather than a static result, just that final photo. That's not a project, that's just a final project photo, right? And so, this includes explaining the homeowner's original problem. Maybe the challenges you've encountered during the project could be with the location, the layout, could be with permitting, and are you going to be able to get this through the tough permitting standards of maybe your particular city or historical district, and then all those decisions that really are going to lead to the final outcome, the final project outcome. So the context really transforms a visual into a narrative, making that content more relatable, more meaningful. And the outcome of this really is that it builds more of an emotional connection and relatability for you and the homeowners. They're going to be able to relate to you more. You're going to really build that connection. You're going to really build that relationship and someone that you really enjoy talking to. Those homeowners, they're going to want to talk to you about this. It's not going to feel like a chore. So really think about how you can be storytelling, story branding a little more. And then the other pillar that we want to talk about is reducing uncertainty. You want to build confidence for the homeowners, for them to want to work with you. So you want to show them what working with you actually looks like. Walking through the process, doing walkthroughs on site, but maybe just walking through how you work with them, your different steps of design and collaboration and planning to building and then to finally closing out the project. What's your communication style like? How do you communicate? How often will you communicate? Those are going to be really important things, especially as that investment gets bigger and bigger. They want to know that, you're not going to just be, radio silent for a week or two, just maybe because nothing's going on. Maybe you're waiting on product, but you should still be communicating with them, right? Let them know, hey, the orders, it's still in the warehouse or it's in transit or we're getting closer. Just regular updates really give people peace of mind. And then timelines for the project. You want to be very clear on what those timelines look like. And then we all know the supply chain issues that have we've all been experiencing. So you want to be very communicative about those timelines, how they may be affected by delays in production and things like that for cabinets or whatever it may be. So be very clear on that timeline. If it's moving out, if it's adjusting, make sure you're communicating that. Don't just assume that, they know that, oh, it was going to be 3 to 6 months. It's going to be now more on the 6 month end. Well, let them know that because they might be still anchored to that 3 month timeline, the short end of the timeline scale. And then also, talk about the problem solving moments that you're going to have. Everything's not going to go, as smooth as butter, probably. You're going to maybe have to problem solve some things and you're going to communicate and collaborate with the homeowner. So let them know how you've done some of that in the past. Give them anecdotes. Hey, the last project we worked on, we came across this. We may see this with your project. And this is how we handled it. And they go, wow, this is great. They're already thinking ahead. So this second component of about reducing uncertainty is really important. Remodeling, custom home building, it's a complex and often stressful process for homeowners and certainly stressful for their wallet. So just kind of heightens the anxiety when you're spending that much money. So, your content should proactively address this by showing how your company communicates how you manage your timelines, how you handle unexpected issues, and just really maintaining organization throughout the project. When homeowners can clearly see what to expect, their confidence is really going to increase. So think about that outcome for your social media posts. You want to remove fear and you want to increase trust. And so everything we've just talked about is going to do that for you. And then the third and final pillar that you really want to be focused on is positioning your difference. What is your unique selling proposition, your USP? I see this oftentimes over and over. So many remodeling websites, we're the best and we're the best because we're the best and you should choose us because we're the best. That kind of thing where it's just, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best. And it's just really monotonous. You really want to position your difference. So, how do you stand out? Clearly communicate who you're best for and who you're not. I know some of you on this webinar, you're picky about who you want to work with because you want to work with people that you like, that you're going to be relatable to. It's going to be an enjoyable process. I mean, when you think about it, most remodelers, especially custom home builders who are even on the shorter end, you're only doing, a few projects a year for home builders. Remodelers, maybe you're doing 10 or 20 projects a year. Maybe you're on the higher end of that. But you want to work with people that you enjoy working with, right? So you want to clearly communicate that up front. Who is going to be a best fit for you? I mean, I had someone a couple of weeks ago, I just said, I'm not sure we're the best fit for you, just because of the things that they were demanding. And just like, we're going to have to change our whole process for this particular remodeler. And I just thought we're just maybe not a good fit. And I let them make that decision, but I kind of suggested it. And so you can do that too. You don't want to just take on any job. I mean, obviously, if finances are a little tight, maybe you do, and maybe you just go, I'm just going to put up with the headaches, and maybe I'm going to learn some things along the way. But be very careful about, finding the best fit for you. And then, how you operate. You really want to position that as a differentiator for you because there are those of you on this call, I know you're great at communication with your clients. And then, there are others that maybe you need to improve upon that. So really, position that as a differentiator to say, hey, we're gonna do all these different things that you've probably never heard about or other people aren't really talking about. And so be very detailed in what your process looks like, what your communication looks like, because that's going to really position you as in the elite category. Because not every contractor does that. They just kind of want to do the job. They love doing the job, but maybe they don't like working with the homeowners and being as communicative as they really need to be in today's day and age. So think about that. And then think about what makes your projects successful. How do you really stand out in terms of positioning your company, yourself? Social media should clearly communicate what makes your company different. How do you stand out? Again, think about that. That social media feed of yours, that's just project photo after project photo. Now we're talking about how do you really position yourself and differentiate? Because when people start scrolling that, they're going to see that and they're going to be like, wow, companies A, B, and C all just keep posting photos. But then your company, because you sat in on this workshop, you're going to be able to say, this is how we differentiate ourselves. And your social media feed is going to prove that out as well. So really want to communicate how your company stands out. This may also include, your approach to craftsmanship, your communication style, the different types of projects you specialize in. Maybe you only do kitchen and bath. Maybe you do it all: basements, baths, kitchens, full home renovations, additions, ADUs, you name it. So you want to be very clear on all the different types of projects you specialize in, and then showcase those as well. Put each of those projects into a different story. And then also you can talk about the type of clients that you typically serve best. And so that they know that, ooh, that's not me at all. Maybe I'm not a good fit. Maybe they're not. Maybe you can save yourself some time by saying that, you don't work with commercial, big commercial projects or something like that. You don't work with corporations that may not have great point of contacts, things like that, that really can talk about the types of clients you work best with. And so without all this clarity, homeowners really have no strong reason to choose, you over another remodeler or builder. So this is what that clarity is going to help with. It's going to help homeowners justify choosing you over all the many, many choices that they're going to have in their market. And so let's talk about what this looks like in real content. To illustrate the difference, consider how a typical portfolio post might present a project with a simple caption describing the completion of, say, a kitchen remodel. While visually appealing, it might look like a beautiful kitchen, beautiful island, lights, cabinets, all that. It might provide very little insight into the actual experience or the value behind that project. And so, kind of just looking at a side by side comparison here, you've got your portfolio post. Hey, this is a, kitchen model that we just completed. And that's it. It's just this, beautiful picture, and people can be like, "Ooh, I like that." Okay, great. But if we're being honest with ourselves, that's it's a little basic, right? It could be a beautiful kitchen. It could be the top 10 out of 10 on craftsmanship, 10 out of 10 on design, cabinet style, cabinet colors, lighting. Everything you've chosen could be just exquisite. You could be winning a Remodeler of the Year awards in NARI or another association. But it is, a fairly basic post. Versus the persuasive post on the right side, where you're telling a story. You're explaining the homeowner problem. You're showing the decisions being made. You're highlighting the process as well as the outcome, those final project pictures. So that persuasive version of the same content, you can see there's same final photo in each post, but that persuasive version is going to introduce the homeowner's initial challenge. You're going to explain the design or functional goals that you've talked about with the homeowner, that probably your ideas have been presented here. You're going to highlight key decisions made during that entire process and in collaboration with the customer. And you're going to describe how that final result addressed those initial needs, those initial goals that they had. So you're really telling a story, but you're telling a story of success. So this approach, it not only showcases the outcome, but also demonstrates expertise, demonstrates good communication, and that problem solving ability that your firm is bringing to the table. So the project remains the same, but the impact of the content changes significantly. So instead of simply, attracting attention, it builds confidence and moves the homeowner closer to taking action, which is the ultimate goal, right? And so let's also talk about the business impact here. When your social media really begins to function as a persuasive tool, the business impact becomes measurable. Remodelers will often see an increase in lead quality, not just quantity, which we like, right? But the quality of the leads, good quality. The people reaching out to you, they already have a more clear understanding of your company and the value that you can bring to them. And so this is going to lead to more productive conversations, and that typically results in higher close rates as well, just because the quality has elevated. You're talking to people that already know you. They already know that you're a good fit, and they're bringing that project that you want. They're not coming to you like they've seen all your social media doing high-end work, and then they come to you with their $5,000 bathroom budget. That you're not going to see that mismatch because they're going to know that you're not the right fit for them already based on all the things you've been posting and talking about. And so, when we look at this from kind of an illustrative, standpoint, you're going to get better qualified leads. They're going to understand who you are and what it's going to be like to work with you and the types of projects you do a little better. There's going to be higher trust built in before that first contact is made. So that's really key because people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. They already seem like they know you, they like you and the things they're putting out, and they already have this inherent trust built in. And so those are really key to kind of get that established before that first contact even comes. And all that's going to really help is really contribute to higher close rates. You're already setting yourself up for success And by success, you're getting the right type of clients, people that you want to work with, they want to work with you. Obviously, that's going to lead to a higher close rate, right? And more importantly, most importantly, maybe, is it's probably going to lead to less sensitivity when it comes to price. You don't have to race to the bottom in pricing for fear of losing the job. You can position yourself as a high-end remodeler or a luxury builder. You can position yourself by showcasing all that in your social media. And so they already know that, hey, I'm not going to get the cheapest price here, but that's not my foremost concern anyways. I want to work with someone that I like, that I trust, that does great work, and I can collaborate and really, build our dream kitchen or whatever it may be. So they're not going to care about price as much. So you're really setting yourself up for a lot more success. And a key statement here that I always think about for our clients is you're not trying to get more attention. You're trying to be chosen faster. You don't want, 10,000 website visits and 100,000 impressions and all those things. They're great to have those metrics to look at, but that's not really what you're trying to get is more attention. You're trying to be chosen by the right types of homeowners and be chosen quicker and over, your competitors. And additionally, when that trust is established earlier in the process, that price sensitivity, it really almost goes to nothing. Those homeowners, they're gonna really be less likely to compare solely on that price and more likely to prioritize the overall experience and the outcome that they've already seen in your social media and that first content, that first contact may produce. So that's going to create a lot more opportunities for those profitable projects. Those projects are going to have maybe a little higher margin. And then also, you're just building a stronger client relationships. I know of several of you on here. You stay in touch and have relationships with past clients. Just you like them. You enjoyed working with them. They like you. You guys become friends. And ultimately, maybe after 3, 4, 5 years, they'd probably reach out to you and say, "Hey, I think it's time to redo our basement. I know you don't do basements, but I want to work with you. And would you do that?" And of course, you're going to say yes. You've probably done basements before. It's just not your focus, but you've got, one of your friends, one of your previous clients that you maintain that relationship with. So it's really going to lead to more business in the future too. And so ultimately, final word on this is the goal is not to generate more attention. It's really to become the obvious choice for that homeowner and for that right type of homeowner that you're looking for. You guys kind of make a perfect match. What they want to work with, what they're expecting from their remodeler, their contractors builder, and then what you ideally want in the ideal customer avatar that you've built out in your mind or in your social media. And so when we talk about implementation, let's talk about, what we should do next here. If your social media is only showing finished projects, you're really missing the opportunity to shape how homeowners think, evaluate, and choose. And so this is where a simple audit becomes pretty powerful for you. And so, look at your current content through the homeowner's lens. See if you can remove yourself from the business owner, the remodeler, and look at it from a homeowner's viewpoint. Does it answer their questions? Does it reduce uncertainty? Does your social media and your content build confidence before they ever reach out? And then from there, you can begin shifting your content mix intentionally. Continue showcasing your work, of course, but add context around the decisions that were made on that project, the challenges that project presented, and then ultimately the outcomes, that final outcome and how it all came together and really achieved that dream project and the goal for that homeowner. And then you can layer in, process-driven and educational content to really guide how homeowners understand remodeling. It helps reinforce your positioning so they know why you're different, that USP we talked about. And then, you want to highlight your culture to build more trust. What is it about your company that really stands out from a culture standpoint? We talk a lot about culture in our company. I've done webinars on culture, and so it's really cool to kind of weave that into your story, into your social media, so that they know that you have a real a company with culture. You go out and do things together. You like each other. You maybe have all your clients over for a barbecue at the office. We've got a client down in Florida that does that. They invite all their previous customers and they do a big summer barbecue, full on spread. I mean, they do this dialed into the nines, and it takes a little money, but one, you're doing it for your company, so all your employees get to enjoy this. So why wouldn't you do it, right? But then when you invite all your previous customers in, they get to, just hang out, meet you, and they're certainly going to remember you when it comes time to add on another project, or even just when it comes time to refer you when their neighbor says, "Oh, I'm thinking about a kitchen remodel," and you go, "Oh, I've got the perfect person for you. Look no further." And that just makes it easy. Those kind of referrals, close at about 100% typically. And so this whole shift is really meant to turn your social media from a passive gallery into an actual active part of your sales process. And so when I talk about auditing your current social media, does it answer homeowner questions? Those FAQs that you should have on your website, you should have on your Google Business profile. And, you should weave those FAQs into your social media. All of you on this webinar today, you get asked the same questions over and over from homeowners, right? About timelines, about your communication, how long, how often you stay in touch, and what about changes, and are there going to be delayed? What's the cost and of this type of remodel versus maybe moving up in finishes a little bit, things like that. So all those FAQs that you get, you should be cataloging those in a document, and then you can use it in all your content. Also, your audit, when you look in terms of your social media, is it showing your process and not just results? I think most people probably are going to say no to this. They're going to be like, "Oh, yeah, I am just putting up all the finished photos." Show the process. Show the journey along the way. And so you really want to start thinking about how do you shift your content mix. And so here really is the ideal formula. 40% of your projects should have context to them, should talk about the challenges and how this project really came about and what you're trying to solve with it. And then 30% of your social media should talk about, the process throughout and kind of educating people on what it's like to work with you and the different things that they can expect throughout that design build process. And then 20% is just really positioning for your company, why you're better, what's your USP, what are your differentiators, what associations might strengthen your position and that you might want to feature. They should already be on your website, right? But feature them in social media as well, because it makes you stand above the other companies that they're not a part of an association. I mean, given all things being equal, do you want to work with a company that's not involved in any remodeling or builder associations? Or do you want to work with companies that are involved with some of the best national and local associations out there? I mean, that kind of becomes a no-brainer answer, right? And then 10% of your social media can be about culture of your company and just building trust. Things that you do, things that you've done for the community, maybe just things that you do within your company that makes people go, "Wow, that's pretty cool. They do that. Like they really have a culture built there. They have game night, or they go out and do employee activities once a month, or you help shelters or the Habitat for Humanity type of organization, things like that can really position you a lot better as well. And so, here's just a couple of different posts of one of our clients. You can see that we're showcasing the whole process, from beginning to end, is showcasing what it's like. The content there is going to talk more about the project. It's not just the pictures we're looking at. We're giving some context and talking about what this project's about, how it's coming together, maybe some snow delays because it's Denver where we are here. We just had 5 inches of snow yesterday. Today it's 69 degrees and sunny. welcome to Denver. So, it's kind of neat to kind of weave those stories in, laugh about it. I mean, I share these stories and people just don't believe it. They're like, oh my God, what is wrong with your weather? So, you can make a story about that. We're on delay right now, but we're keeping everything else moving. We're doing inside stuff. However you want to, build that context and talk about that process. And then, like I said, the positioning, the talking about the associations that you might be a part of, the vendors and accredited companies like the Energy Star, things like that, or real estate organizations that you might be accredited by as well. Just gives you better positioning, a better differentiator on how you can stand out versus all those other competitors that aren't doing anything in that regard. Again, all things, being equal, they're going to pick you over the company that doesn't have any kind of affiliations, any kind of associations or really vendor accreditations. And then, 10%, that last 10%, you just want to talk about building culture, building trust, and showcasing some of the way that your company works and does things. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, but just kind of keep that formula in mind, the 40, 30, 20, 10, and you'll be really, on your way to more successful, more engaging social media. And so, step one of conducting your audit from the homeowner's lens, do a 20 post review. And what I mean by this is analyze your last 20 social media posts to see if they answer the silent questions that are, can I trust them? Are they going to be worth the investment? What's it going to be like to work with them? So, do any of your last 20 posts answer any of those questions? Do any of them alleviate any fears or concerns or anxiety that a homeowner may have working with you or any company? Do they address any of that? Probably not, but hopefully a couple of you guys on here have some good social media dialed in and are answering that. And then also look at the results versus the process audit check. Tally how many of those 20 posts show only finished photos versus the number of posts that explain the steps taken to reach that result. So again, are you showing just the finished photos, or are you showing the whole process from beginning to end, telling that story, helping homeowners see themselves in the story that you can create for them? And then the safety assessment audit. Ask yourself if a stranger would feel safe inviting your team into their home based solely on your social media feed. Do you show any pictures of your team, of your workers at work? Do they look like they're, dressed fairly respectable? They look like they just came from the homeless camp and you're, might give people a little bit of the EBGBs, they usually should wear like a logoed shirt and, pair of jeans, that's fine. But, you also, I've hired people and you just kind of go, oh, wow, I'm going to have to watch these guys the whole time. So, that safety assessment, I kind of make light of it just to kind of have some fun with it, but it's very real as well. Step two is also then build your persuasive content mix, those percentage breakdown that we talked about. 40% is adding context, select an active project you're working on, explain the why behind it, including the homeowner's original problem, and then the hurdles that you've overcame. And then 30% educating and reducing anxiety, posting that process walkthrough or that video. Videos are super successful, super effective. Showing how you protected a client's property during a tear down, maybe any kind of a video walkthrough that could be really helpful. Taking out a wall without destroying everything on the other side in the other room. Then positioning your difference, the 20%, draft a post and share a kind of a difference statement that clearly defines who you are, who you're best for, and how your operations are unique from all the other remodelers out there. And then that 10% where you highlight your culture, you feature your team members to humanize your brand and really to build trust between yourself, your staff, and the homeowner. So there's a lot you can accomplish by really sticking to that mix. And then step three is just optimizing for the decision journey. Reframing your old work. Take an existing before and after photo and rewrite the caption to include specific decisions and the emotional impact that may have been gained from that project. You can also address that price sensitivity we talked about earlier, creating content that explain the value of a professional quote versus helping clients understand that the cheapest bid is most often the riskiest bid. We all know that, right? So addressing that could be very helpful. And then tracking the inquiry quality, moving away from tracking your likes and really starting to monitor, if you're getting more leads that mention specific educational or process driven posts. Now, you're still trying to get likes, right? You're still trying to get likes, follows, all that. But do you start seeing that you get more mentions or more comments or maybe more inbound lead volume that specifically mention your education or the process that you explain? I've got a sales call coming up in a couple hours, and they came from the last webinar that we did. So it's a direct correlation, and that's what you're looking for, where someone can say, "Oh, I really like how you talked about that one project, and this, and this." You may not know what they're talking about, and you probably don't want to let on, but then you can go back and look at your social media or look at your case studies page on your website and be like, that's where that came from. So you want to see if you can track the direct correlation to say, hey, this stuff is really working. And then, the fundamental takeaway today is really simple but critical. Social media should not function as a static portfolio. That's your gallery on your website. Your social media should act as a dynamic decision-making tool that helps homeowners feel confident in choosing you as their remodeler of choice. Portfolio demonstrates capability, but persuasive content builds trust. In today's market, trust is what drives action. Remodelers who understand this distinction and adjust their approach accordingly, they're going to position themselves ahead of their competitors who continue to rely solely on just showcasing those finished photos. In the end, the difference between being seen and being chosen comes down to how effectively a company communicates, not just what they do, but if they are the right choice. So that's really important, and really final takeaway there. I promised all of you guys that stayed to the end some freebies, so thank you for everyone. I see a bunch of folks still on here, so I really appreciate that. For those of you that stayed to the end here, I'm going to be emailing those to you based on the registration info. The first one, it's a guide that kind of mirrors this presentation, so it kind of will be a refresher for you. It goes into detail on why you might be losing jobs, if you're treating your social media simply as that portfolio gallery that we were talking about. So that's going to be very helpful as a refresher for you. And then the second freebie is I'm going to include a workbook that's designed to help you create a 90-day content plan based on the principles that we've talked about today. Between these two content guides, you should be able to get pointed in the right direction for sure. If you need any help, let me know. I'm happy to help you out there. And also, if you don't get these in your email, first check your spam box. Sometimes, emails with attachments like that might hit your spam box. But if you don't get them, just reach out to me. We'll make sure to send them, because that's your reward for staying here today and being a part of this. I saw a couple questions come in. If you got any questions, let me know. I'm here to answer them. I want to read a couple questions that came in throughout. Karen asked, what project photos should I post before and during and after a remodel? So good question. We're not just doing the after photos. Post basically a simple story arc. So what we're talking about is the before is to show the problem, the challenge, and what you wanted to accomplish with that remodel. Might be something very unique, might be something kind of standard. Don't take for granted that your knowledge of the problem is, oh, that's no big deal. It's not, it might not be a big deal for you, but it could be a big deal for most homeowners out there that just don't know how to solve that challenge and how to make their dream project come to life. And then you also want to include a few during the project kind of photos to show the craftsmanship, to show the process and unfolding and how that looks. And then you want to include some after photos, of course, to show the massive transformation that's taken place and that final, level of quality and craftsmanship that you're known for. The best posts really help picture what you solved, not just what you built. Kind of showcasing that beginning to end whole process. So, good question, Karen. There. I hope that helped everyone else as well. Um, David also asked how to get a homeowner's permission to share photos online. So that's a good question. I'm not an attorney. I'm not dispensing legal advice here in no way, shape, or form. But what you want to do is ask early, ideally during the project, kickoff. Um, and you can also include that photo permission in your contract, or maybe even just having a simple release form for it, and just reassure clients that you're not going to include their names, their addresses, no family photos, valuables, or anything that's personally identifying unless they approve it. We're really just talking about how do we showcase the project photos and do it in a way that you can use those to build your brand without compromising their personal integrity. So that's a good question. Usually adding that in your contract usually solves everything there. And then one last question just came in right here from Frank. Frank said, "What captions or hashtags help turn project photos into leads?" So that's a good one. Where a lot of times I see posts with no hashtags. I see other posts with 15 hashtags. We're obviously going from one end of the spectrum to the other. So you want to write captions that explain the problem, explain the solution, and explain the result. So, quoting like, "This outdated bathroom had poor storage, so we added a double vanity, better lighting, and a walk-in shower." So you're really talking about the whole process there. So now you can use hashtags for walk-in shower and solving storage solutions, things like that. Bathroom remodeling, of course, the obvious ones. You guys know that already. Um, and then you can also use local hashtags to highlight the areas you're working in, the neighborhoods, the subdivision names, or maybe service specific terms, for the exact service they're getting, whether it's bathroom remodeling versus kitchen remodeling, things like that. The caption though matters a lot more, Frank, than the hashtag. So don't get too hung up on hashtags. They can help, but the caption, what you're really talking about, that's where where you're really going to see your best value and return on investment for your social media efforts. Also, always include a soft call to action. Something like, thinking about a kitchen remodel this year, send us a message, something like that. You always want to have a call to action. That's one of the things that I see missing most often is you've got average social media. Maybe you've got great social media posting, but there's never a call to action. I never see those, or very rarely. Like they're all your marketing. You're not doing this for your health, right? You're not doing it because you like to spend an extra hour or two in your evenings instead of spending time with your family or loved ones. You're doing it to market your brand, to build your brand, to bring in more qualified leads and to grow your business, right? So this is not just a hobby. Social media is not just a hobby. It's you're trying to use that to position yourself and to grow your company. So all of your marketing should have calls to action, just like your website should have all those buttons, click here for a consultation, or check out our spring discounts, or whatever it might be. Remodelers mostly aren't doing discounts, but maybe windows and doors, roofing, they always do that, $500 off or $1,000 off, whatever. So just make sure you have a call to action as well. That's going to be very helpful in trying to get people to actually reach out to you. So speaking of reaching out, if you ever want to reach out to me here at Home Remodeler SEO, I'm always here to help you. I'll give you guidance. I'll give you some tips. Not here to sell you anything. If you do, say that you want to work with us or you want us to explore that possibility, then great. But otherwise, I'm here as a resource for you. I'm here as a guide to help you grow your company. I'm here to serve the building and remodeling construction industry. It's what I love to do. It's what I've been involved in for decades, and grew up around the blue collar trades with my pops. working with him and his flooring business. I get a little emotional thinking about him. I lost him a year ago. But yeah, reach out if you want. Always here for you. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everyone for being a part of this webinar, for staying through the whole workshop. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate your attendance. I appreciate you just following us and the education and value we're putting out there. If I haven't talked to any of you, feel free to reach out. Let's touch base. I can help guide you. Or we just shoot the breeze and talk remodeling. You want to come on my podcast and talk about the success you're creating for your company? That'd be great too. Just recorded another episode yesterday. So, anyways, I look forward to speaking with each and every one of you on this webinar today. Hopefully, get to speak with you in the future. And maybe we can work together, or I can just, give you some guidance. But otherwise, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on this. I don't take it for granted. So thank you for taking time out of your busy day to spend some time with me. And I hope you got some good education, some good value out of this. I'll look forward to sending all of you guys that stayed here those freebies. And until the next workshop we put on next month, everyone have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. And we'll see you on the flip side. Thanks, everyone. Take care.